Hey guys, how's it going? Kripparrian here. Today I want to give you guys a drafting video. I want to highlight how I draft Mage and the details of every decision that I make. There's a few important aspects to this. A lot of my decisions are influenced by my experience, but also by using the Hearthstone Arena app. Hearthstone Arena app basically makes it so I don't slip up and miss a highly synergistic card, because usually when I'm drafting I move along a lot faster than I do in this video, but in this video I want to move as slow as possible to give you guys every single thought involved. And yeah, I mean, powerful arena deck is kind of one of the main ingredients you need to succeeding in Arena. So I hope you guys learned something from this. I hope it helps. I can do a few more of these if you guys like these type of videos, if you guys find them useful and informative. I don't think I can do them for every class, but probably about 6 out of the 9 classes I have down pretty well. So let me know what you think. Hope you guys enjoy it, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.
So we're going to do full in-depth on every single card that we pick. So we're using Hearth Arena right now. That's where these scores are coming from. We use that as a guideline. I don't always pick the top card from Hearth Arena, but it's usually the top card, and if it's not, it's very close. I like using the Hearth Arena thing mostly because sometimes I don't consider synergy when I'm drafting very quickly, and then like a card pops up and it's way higher than I thought it would be, and I look at it like, oh yeah, of course, makes sense now. So it's kind of like my bro trying to keep me from picking crappy cards. Alright, so first few picks are typically just Hearth Arena because they're not influenced by synergy, so just have their tier scores there. Wild Pyro, if you're like a really good player, you get a bit of an advantage because you can make plays, but because right now the meta is basically Mage, Rogue, and a few sprinkled in Paladins, whenever you get a good Wild Pyro effect, you usually lose the Wild Pyro the turn after. It's still pretty good, but basically what I'm saying is if you plan on getting high wins, the Wild Pyro is a little bit worse than what it says usually. So, but anyway, we picked the Violet Teacher here. So, same idea here. 1-drops are really good. This would be very good if we had weapons, but we're going to be playing a lot of mages and rogues if this deck gets anywhere, and our average with mage is like 8 something, so it'll probably get somewhere. So we need cards that are good in the early game and the late game, and these are garbage in the late game, and sometimes good, sometimes not even good in the early game. Here we just have a gigantic lead over the other cards. Mirror Entity, as a person who streams and people watch, is generally a worse card because if someone's sniping me, they're just going to save their bad minion for my Mirror Entity. So probably not for you, but for me this card is like -10. And Novice doesn't compare to Nesting Rock because, you know, we got to get those fatty, overstated guys. Nesting Rock is certainly that. Now, this is an interesting one. So it suggests the Abusive Sergeant. I think I would have snap-picked the Violet Illusionist. Naga Corsair, again, it's a little bit worse because people have the Galaka Crawler more often than you'd think in their deck. Abusive Sergeant doesn't actually have any good targets. It has some synergy with Violet Teacher because we're inevitably going to get a bunch of spells and probably going to get some 1/1s. But unless we have decent early game, Abusive Sergeant is not that good. Right now we have 1 decent 3-drop. We probably want at least 3 decent 3-drops, and Violet Illusionist is a pretty decent 3-drop. I think I'm actually going to pick the Violet Illusionist. Okay, so the Leatherclad is very good because often when you're at high wins you're playing against Mage, as I mentioned, and often mages have extreme card generation, so the Battle Cry, as opposed to the last few expansions, actually does trigger a lot. Like, you can get charged on this pretty frequently, but Forbidden Flame is just too flexible to give up, though Leatherclad is probably better than it seems these days. But yeah, Forbidden Flame is too good. And you can use it for 2 damage on turn 2. You can use it to kill a large minion later on. I really hate 1 health minions. Like I rank this card very low, but Dread Corsair is really bad because we don't have weapons, and it's also really bad because it's a pirate. Pirate is a negative right now in Arena. Frost Nova, maybe if I had a lot of board clears, but yeah. Okay, this is pretty interesting. So Mistress of Mixtures, insane in the early game. Very good against people who try to rush you down. Like it's great against like Hunter or an aggro rogue. Even in the late game, it's really good. Spellbreaker has gained some traction because there's a lot of effects that need to be silenced, and it's such a huge card against Paladin. We already have a good matchup against Paladin, but you know, there's no guarantees. I'm actually kind of torn. I have to think about this one a little bit. Spellbreaker is one of those cards that's always very useful. Mistress kind of misses against other mages. It's usually good against other rogues. I think either one is fine. I'm gonna go with the Spellbreaker because I have gained some appreciation for silences. Argent Squire is a very good one-drop. It's okay in the late game because you have the 1 damage hero power. So in the late game, it can deal like 2 to 3 damage over a turn or two. So it's okay. But yeah, Polymorph again, too good to not pick. We have a few. Oh, there's one of these cards throwing. Yeah, okay. I wouldn't have thought of that. We don't want to pick 1 health minions because again, most of our opponents who are actually gonna give us a challenge are gonna be mages and rogues. Arcane Missiles is a high variance card. I was going to pick the Thunder Lizard. Thunder Lizard is, whatever. Like 3 mana, 3/3 is okay. And if we get Elemental, it can be very good. 3 mana, 3/3 is fine. That's fine for a 3-drop. And this basically finishes off for 3 drops. And now we can pick only premium 3-drops if we want. So this is where we have to think a little bit. Blaze Caller is, if you have enough elementals, it's way better than Charged Devilsaur. You guys know that because you don't see this card in Constructed. But Charged Devilsaur is still pretty good. You get like a removal and then it sticks around on the board. It's pretty good. It's probably about as good as Argent Commander. I kind of agree with this spread of points here. It is worse right now, but we have enough 3-drops. We have, maybe enough 4s, so we're really only missing a few 2s, and because this is the 10th pick, 20 cards left, we can actually pick for synergy rather than for card quality. Like this is where we can kind of start thinking about which direction we want to take in the deck. So I don't think Blaze Caller is bad. I feel like if you pick all the elementals you're given, you actually end up with like 3 to 4 at the very least. Yeah, I don't know. Fine, let's go with the Charged Devilsaur. This is a bit of a tricky one. This is really, do we have enough 4-drops? And yeah, we kind of do. 2 4-drops and a Polymorph is pretty good for 10 cards in. We obviously don't consider that. Giant Mastodon is a huge gamble card. And again, it's a bigger gamble against mages and rogues. And priests. But alright, let's get a taunt in there. This is Snap Pick. This card's gonna go through the roof over the others. So if you're using Hearthstone Arena and it's like 40 points higher, you don't really have to think. You just pick the card that's 40 points higher. So that's what we're gonna do there. Oh boy, I picked this card before and it was horrible, but we could use another 4-drop. If it lands on a big guy, it's gigantic. If it lands on a small guy, it's kind of fine because we wouldn't want to draw that card in the late game. Again, like the 40-point rule. Alright. Well, that's an elemental. I was actually going to pick the Thunder Lizard. You can see the base score of the Thunder Lizard is higher. It is a better card overall. I am lacking removal, and Wolf Rider is just crappy removal, but it's still removal. We have enough 3-drops. Once again, it just, how likely am I to get elementals? I think I'm going to go with Thunder Lizard. I still think I can pull a few elementals. We don't have any secrets, and if we did, 1 health guy, we want to be a bit more wary about that. We have a lot of 3-drops. We only have 1 5, and this can be a very powerful 5-drop if we have some minions on the board. So even though it's only slightly better than the Skirming Tentacle. I think it's actually a lot more useful to a balanced deck, and getting a balanced deck is very important in the end. Same thing here, we don't want to go for that. Cult Apothecary is pretty good, but you usually need some board clears. Like, the card's good when you can like use that right before you can play your board clear. It gives you that extra little bit. But if I don't have a board clear, I have to play a completely different game plan. And Arcanosmith is a bit more of a zoo card, so it helps with that a little bit better. Yeah, we get the Frostwolf synergy too, is pretty good. Here we're gonna get the 40-point rule. Bog, Creepa. Oh, look at that landslide. Polymorph. That's gonna be an interesting one. Oh wow. So I have 2 polymorphs, which doesn't really act as much synergy because we'd never hold on a Mana Worm for a turn we want to polymorph. It's not worth it to do that. But we have the Glyph and we have the Forbidden Flame. Both of those cards are cards that we would keep in our opening hand and use in the early game if we're given a decent opportunity. I think I might consider maybe like a Gnomish, maybe if I had like a board clear and if I had more early game, but we're lacking early game and we have a lot of 4-drops, so Mana Worm seems pretty good here. Oh, we're getting our first board clear here. Now that is a gigantic difference, even over a decent card. Pretty easy. You start to get minus to your scores because it accounts for synergy later on. Thunder Lizard, seriously? Damn, man. I guess Ice Barrier is within range, but Ice Barrier is very weak. It's like a card that could win you the game in those very marginal games where you need some HP, but in those same games, if you just had another card to fight for the board a bit more efficiently, you may have saved yourself, you know, somewhere around that amount of damage. Thunder Lizard it is. Well, we have 3 Thunder Lizards, so I guess Firefly is a must pick. Sated Threshodon is a very powerful card because there's a lot less transform removal now. There's no like Entomb, there's no Polybore, and yeah, these are pretty fringe, but they still exist. And it's less likely that you can get Silence removed, so a big minion with a Death Rattle effect, even though it's not that good, is very strong. Like if we had more early game, we'd easily pick this card, but we don't have early game, so we pick Firefly. Oh, this is gonna be a really tough pick. Wow. So we have the 40-point rule, and there's the 100+ point rule. We don't even dwell. Counterspell is pretty good secret, actually. But we have so many 3-drops, we'd never play Counterspell. Unless it would be to counter a late game board clear. But I think in the mid game and late game, I'd be the one catching up, not the one punishing. I don't think Counterspell is going to work for this archetype. I think Doppelgangster has to be it. Well, we have an Ancient of Blossoms. It's important to have a certain number of taunts. And we have 5. 5 is a lot of taunts, actually. Yeah, we don't have 6-drops, but that's not that important. Like, on turn 6 and stuff, you can just play multiple cards on the same turn. I think I'd pick this card if I didn't need all these Thunder Lizards to activate, but the way I think about it is, this is essentially 2 elementals in one, and you know that if that activates 1 Thunder Lizard, it's better than Ancient of Blossoms. And considering we have 3 Thunder Lizards, I think that's probably going to happen. I'm going to pick the Firefly. I think we just go for the 2-drop here. Yeah. I don't value Arcane Missiles as much as Hearth Arena. Probably they're right, but I don't know. I don't want to deal with RNG. Like, if your opponent plays like a powerful 1-drop and you're going second, you often have to Arcane Missiles and take a coin flip, and the outcome of that coin flip will often decide the game. And, you know, if you're like a 5-win average, 6-win average player, that might be a good move. But, you know, we don't want to take those chances. We want to try to go the long game and outplay when we can, rather than take coin flips on turn 1. It works with Mana Worm. I guess that is a decent consideration, but nah. Okay, so here we have Kodo versus Bomb Squad. We have 2 polymorphs, a meteor, probably a few poisons, probably another removal. We have Devil Slayer. We have a lot of big minion removal. We kind of need a power play. I'm actually running a pretty good control deck, and when you start playing the good control decks, you don't want to take 5 damage. So I'm gonna agree with the Kodo here. The Flippy is very strong against priests. There's not that many priests, but priests often do very well against mage. They just stack a minion with a hell of a lot of health, and you can never kill it. And Craig's Alchemist often reverses that pretty successfully. Plus the other cards blow. That's a pretty big deal. Yeah. Last card. That's an interesting one. Obviously, Babbling Book is the better card, but it seems like Frozen Crusher takes it with synergy. Do we need a big drop? We have like 4, 5. We have like 5 big drops. 5 big drops is pretty good. What about 1 drops? We have 3 1 drops. 3 1 drops is also pretty good. Yeah, we get the Elemental. Always book. I just think if you're losing, Frozen Crusher sucks. And I think this deck might be more of a control comeback deck rather than a push deck. Like if I had, you know, a Fireball or 2 or maybe 3, I'd pick Frozen Crusher easy peasy. But we don't really have that flexibility to push for face because, like, I don't think we have a single card that can hit my opponent in the face. Not one. We actually have none. So I'm going to go with a Babbling Book here. Overall, this deck is pretty strong. The card quality is, I think, slightly above average, and it's mage, so we'll probably get like 7 wins or so. Score here, 71.2. Yeah, that's a little bit above average. I think the average tier score of this expansion is probably 70 or maybe just under 70.